Remember when Starfield came out and everyone was criticizing it for being utterly mediocre? What was the defense from Bethesda fans, Microsoft, Xbox fans? They would come out and say, modders are gonna fix everything. Anything broken, the modders are gonna patch it up. We're going to have brand new planets. You're going to be able to explore at will. You're not going to run into invisible walls where a planet is essentially just a small sandbox, a play pit. No, you're going to be able to go everywhere because modders will make everything possible. Bethesda's developers, they might be incompetent. They can't really do the job properly. But unpaid fans of the game, these modders, they are going to make it all work. That is what we were led to believe. But it seems like the plot is thickening, and maybe it's not going to be that easy. Maybe modders are going to have a hard time, and they might even just give up. They might say, hey, Starfield, this house, this game, it's built on a very middling foundation. So if the game itself is not very good, why should modders spend time on it? The only practical reason to do so would be if it's very easy to mod. And traditionally, Bethesda games have been quite easy to work on. There's 40,000 plus mods for Fallout 4. There's probably hundreds of thousands for Skyrim, and that's part of the reason that modders will spend their time on them, apart from the fact that they are popular games, so that they know that their mods are likely going to be downloaded by lots of players who are actively enjoying these games, even if they're years old. But for Starfield, it seems like it's not as easy as in the past. We can see here, Starfield feels like it wasn't made to be modded, says unofficial patch modders. And to give some context, there is a volunteer team currently building an unofficial Starfield patch. It aims to fix all of the bugs, which is a nightmare effort given how many issues that there are in the game right now. Not just that though, also spelling mistakes. If you've used some of those text logs, subtitles in the game, they can't even get the spelling right. I mean, that's something even myself, without a lot of technical knowledge, I think I could jump onto Microsoft Word and probably get the basics right there. Maybe not, but they are going to be putting that work in. They're going to be fixing bugs. They're going to try and get it into a decent state from a quality control perspective. But they're having trouble. It's not as easy as past Bethesda games, and the motivation is probably quite down, given when they began, they probably thought, yeah, Starfield, I've jumped in, it's maybe not so good in the first 10 hours, but I know it's going to get better. Todd said the more we play, the better it is. But they are finding that that is not the case, like the rest of us. And the actual fundamentals of the game, the technical side, this won't be a technical video, I'm gonna try and keep this as simple as possible, but that technical side is not easy. The game has just been built in a disorganized way. It likely resembles my cable management under my desk right now. It's a mess, and modders are starting to realize it. They assumed it would be like building mods for Skyrim, Fallout 4, but it seems fundamentally Starfield hasn't been built with mods in mind, which is crazy to me because it always seemed like the selling point, the long-term selling point. Todd's come out a number of times and has said this is not just a one-and-done game, we expect this to be played for a decade because modders, the community, they're going to keep building on this. They're going to be adding new stuff, new content for everyone to enjoy. We want to make that easy. But that was another lie, it seems like. Another PR statement from Todd to get everyone excited. It seems like that they rushed this game out and had no thought of modders at all. If we have a bit of a look at what people are saying, the TLDR of the article is that modders went in expecting it to be easy to build these mods, even just fixing bugs and some of that Bethesda jank. Not necessarily creating a bunch of new content, just doing the basics. That seems to be really tricky. The developer does get technical, but they boiled that down into simpler terms and said it's essentially a hack. Like they built this game thinking they would add modding someday, but they haven't actually added it yet. They say that the only reason that we can mod it already at all is because we've modded the other games using the same engine and we know what to do. But a lot of stuff is really broken compared to their past games, previous games like Fallout 4. they are essentially saying that right now the tools are not available to mod with, and they're basically trying to make it work based on past experience, but it's not fit for purpose. What they're doing is really a struggle. I will say this, because some people will call that out and say, hey, the creation kit, the official tools for modders, they're not out yet. That's what this problem is, and that's common. It's not always the case that Bethesda released that creation kit on launch. I can't speak for, say, Fallout 4 or Skyrim. I'm not personally a modder. Some people will know better than me, but I believe it's the case that the creation kit wasn't there at launch. The easy way to build these mods and develop the game. However, I don't really believe that's the main issue. If we look here, some discussions on this mod situation, there are some I believe to be copers who are saying things like, if it's not out, if the creation kit, the tools are not out yet, then yeah, this is basically no news clickbait. Modders know what they can do is very limited until it arrives, and they know it will arrive after a year or whatever, and this sentence might seem logical, but if you dig a bit deeper, there's a really good example of why this is a problem. Because the articles out there say that it's not just the missing mod tools. The whole framework, the whole foundation for modding in the game's code is apparently very broken, to the point that modding overall seems entirely neglected during development. The only reason the mods are even able to get things going, they're able to get things done, is because the engine is similar enough to those older versions. So again, backs up what that mod was saying, that they are able to get things going, they're having to stick band-aids on, they're having to really work around Bethesda. But it's not easy. It does not seem like the game was built for mods in mind at all, and maybe that is a reason for why the creation kit isn't out yet, because Bethesda kind of know that this isn't going to work very well, and they're probably going to get a bunch of negative feedback. Did Bethesda need that? Well, Starfield, reviews for the game were reasonably good at the start. However, if you follow, say, the Steam user reviews, it started, I think, in the mid-80s, maybe even high 80s, and it has slowly been going down, down, down. It's not that far away from mixed. I think it's in the 60s now. So any more negativity, some sort of scandal, some sort of false promise, and that is really going to plummet things. And if they're still trying to get sales, build that interest, and potentially have a game that people are going to be interested in for 10 years, they need the mods to be something that happens, and that doesn't look likely. There is actually a very detailed breakdown of what the problems are on Nexus mods, where a lot of people do download their mods, and if anyone does have the technical knowledge to understand what's going on, what the problems are, please leave a comment. I'd like to hear about it. I'm sure others would too. This is quite a lengthy article, but if we go down here, there is a bit of a breakdown on what this all means. So, based on community research, it appears that Starfield has problems accessing certain records, and if you go into the detail here, it just seems like things do not work the way that they used to with Skyrim, with Fallout 4, and modders are having a hard time. Even if the creation kit's there, if the tools are there are just going to be some really, really big teething issues, and it seems like you could create a mod that would work with Skyrim if you followed the same rules, that could just be completely broken if you try and do the same for Starfield. What that pretty much means for someone like myself, for most people, the end users who just want to play new experiences in a Bethesda game, they want to jump into Starfield and maybe have something interesting going on, maybe that's tricky. Modders may realize this is more trouble than it's worth. Why bother creating new content for Starfield when people don't even really like the game anyway? We might as well put our efforts into something else. Maybe our own game, maybe we'll just go back to Fallout or Elder Scrolls, build something there instead. People are still playing those games. I wouldn't be surprised in a year's time if there's more people jumping into Skyrim than there are Starfield, because word of mouth is just dissipating really, really fast. It does beg the question, if Bethesda knew as they were building Starfield that it was going to be difficult to mod, that they weren't going to design it around mods, and that was going to be an issue one day, if they knew it was all going to be challenging for the modders, why are they so obsessed with the creation engine? There are people who are firing up Starfield, they jumped into it day one, and they were sick of it very quickly because they go into a shop, there's a loading screen, they leave the shop, there's another loading screen, they go 1 meter across the road, another loading screens, loading screens, go to another solar system, it's all a bunch of menus, it's all a bunch of fluff. People had had enough of that. And yet Bethesda, their defense has always been that we can't build our certain game without using the creation engine, or at least it's going to be extremely difficult. It just seems like the creation engine doesn't really serve a purpose anymore. I mean, if you play, say, a Skyrim from 15 years ago, it feels unique, it feels like a Bethesda title. You can pick up absolutely everything, you can drop it off at your shack, you can interact with the world in many various ways, and that was very cool in 2011. However, 2023, there's a lot of games doing the same thing. They're huge open worlds of scale, you can interact with all of the different environments. That's not really a huge novelty, and Bethesda have just struggled to catch up, and they've held onto this creation engine, and the last stand of that seemed to be the mods, getting everyone involved. If that is not there, there is just no point, and there can really only be criticism applied at the creation engine. There's no longer that big list of positives and negatives, because the huge positive, the one in green there up the top with the lights flashing, that was mods. If that's not there, the positives start to have very big diminishing returns. Bethesda may even know it. I again feel like they might be trying to hide this fact. They were hoping to get everyone interested initially in Starfield. They thought maybe their reputation, their style of game would still be enough to capture people, but it wasn't. They got the excitement, now they've got the detraction. It's very hard to find people enthusiastic about the game. The big problem for them, though, is there's not even a lot of anger at this stage. It feels like indifference. And if people aren't even angry at your game anymore, they're just disinterested, that is when you lose people and they probably won't come back. If I think of a game like The Last of Us Part 2, that had people who were positive about it, but it also had a lot of people, like myself, who were negative towards it. We were annoyed. We felt like they ruined what could have been a good series. We were angry because they did take a big chance. They did try and be ambitious. We just felt that they did it the wrong way. But Starfield feels like they tried to do everything safe. It's a space game, space travel, all these planets, infinite possibilities. And they still managed to do the bare minimum. It feels like a wet rag of creativity where nothing's really happening. I've seen comments such as, it's almost like ChatGPT made a game and this is it, and that's kind of what it feels like. It is just super generic. There's nothing memorable. Honestly, the meme images of NPCs looking at you weirdly, that's probably the most memorable part to me. It's what I'm going to remember. It's not going to be going to Neon the City and, oh, it looks amazing even though Cyberpunk did this better 3 years ago. There's just nothing there. I was hoping that mods could help this, that we could finally have a way to experience genuine planets with handcrafted points of interest, genuine dungeons, play out a story that's actually interesting. Skyrim had that. There's some really cool total conversion mods, which are essentially their own games within Skyrim with their own rule sets, their own quests, their own leveling up systems. They're really, really fun, but I don't know if Starfield's going to get them, because if it's hard to do it, why would people bother? They're going to look at other games, which means Bethesda will lose the only point of relevance that they have, which is getting modders involved. This could all be incorrect. Maybe the creation kit comes out, it fixes everything, this is all nonsense. But the fact that technical people in the know are finding these fundamental problems, it doesn't paint a pretty picture, and if word of mouth starts to get worse, people say this game is a turd in every possible way, no one wants to play it for the next 12 months, let alone the next 10 years, maybe Microsoft will say to Bethesda, scrap this engine, move to something like Unreal 5, which, by the way, I don't think is a sure thing, because so many games on Unreal 5 have huge technical problems. I'm not saying everyone has to move over to Unreal 5, but it seems to be an engine that's easier to develop on than some of these developers' internal engines. CD Projekt Red, heaps of issues with their own engine. It seems now to be the same for Bethesda. If you can't enter a building without a loading screen, surely you've got to have a look at what's going on, and maybe Bethesda will finally move on. I'm not sure that without a huge shake-up to personnel, things will improve. Bethesda just don't have that good track record anymore. They've had multiple duds in a row. They've had Fallout 76 memed on completely. Starfield, people were hoping it was back to the glory days. Now it's getting memed on. Now people don't care. Mods are probably the only thing that can save them in the short term. If it can't, they better get to work on Elder Scrolls 6. They better make it in a new engine so it feels modern. I don't care if we lose a couple of janky little things, like the way you talk to an NPC and it sort of just lines up with you super quickly, it zooms in. I don't care about that stuff at all. I don't think anyone else does anymore. All it really does is to serve the Oblivion format of memes. That's what we sort of think of. So they need to lift their game. It's the only way they're going to stay relevant. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.